So, all right. So we're here with Julie and Dave. We've been chatting around the Resistance exhibition. We meant to do more of these audio-visual interviews, but we're just chatting about a bit of history and how different. This exhibition's 92 to 2016. Talking about free festivals now. Julie was at early free festivals, but how movements flow into each other and how historically they affect each other. So, Julie, you were saying you went to some free festivals.
Yeah, free festivals. So we used to have this little free festival above where my hometown in Wantage. It was the White Horse Festival. I don't know if you know
yeah, like the Uffington White Horse.
Yeah, Uffington White Horse is actually the most beautiful white horse in the whole wide world.
Dedicated to Epona, the ancient Celtic horse goddess.
Okay, and also sometimes some people think it's a dragon because it's like it's so elegant as well.
Okay.
But yeah, so we but one of the things I've been kind of thinking about is the fact that, like, to me, Runnymede is a bit of a combination of Occupy and that festival vibe.
Yeah, yeah.
So it kind of, because it was cultural, and so for me, the early free festival movement was more cultural than it was political. I mean,
because I was saying I saw you as an Occupy person, and you were saying you went to Free Festival Stonehenge and
yeah. To me, it was more about music, and it was more about our DIY culture as well.
Well, with the sign over there, DIY culture, I first had that in squatting in the late 80s, early 90s, was do-it-yourself culture, house yourself, do-it-yourself housing, do-it-yourself culture,
exactly. And it was that kind of feeling, because in the 80s it was very consumerist, it was like we would get out and we would create our own culture. But I don't remember myself it being, maybe some of my friends were more political, but I don't remember having that. It wasn't political in the way that Occupy is political. But I thought Runnymede, that festival, was like bringing together certain of those elements, like, because we had music and we had poetry, whereas some of the recent Occupy, although we've had a little bit of that, sometimes it's felt like that side has kind of like been a bit.
Different parts of the movement have, more celebratory with Stonehenge and the Free Festival ones, and Occupy was definitely more organised and focused, but it was talking about some more concrete issues, how we're going to change things, and how we're going to...
Yeah, it's very consciously, physically.
So there's a practical, political, who controls the land, who owns the land, and then you get into permaculture and ecological stuff, and who has rights to the use of the land, and then you celebratory stuff, more arts and politics.
Wandsworth Eco Village, I suppose, was the introduction to some of us, because George Monbiot came to the Rainbow Centre and we let him speak up in the pulpit. We didn't usually let people use that because we didn't want to be hierarchical and that jive. And basically, he did a talk all about the levellers and the diggers and explained to a lot of us who didn't know about those times about what happened with the levellers and the diggers, and it was like a whole hidden history partly, because you heard a little bit but not much. English Civil War, and then we went and did Wisley Airport, which went up to St George's Hill. I was remembering a few activists the other day, talking through this, and that was really, got it in the newspapers, put land, occupation land things a bit more in the discussion thing, and then there are, other ones, Wandsworth Eco Village, then also influenced Kew Bridge Eco Village, and then that influenced Parliament Square, Democracy Village, because a lot of the people who set up Democracy Village came from Kew Bridge Eco Village, and they'd come to us and said, we want to learn from what went, how it went at Wandsworth, for putting it into Kew Bridge Eco Village, 96-ish at, I think we went from the Rainbow Centre, so it was one of the Rainbow still going. The Guinness site, the Guinness development site, right next, was it near the bridge, next to the bridge? 10-acre site. We went with like 300 people in a convoy of people, and went and took the site, and the first week or two was amazing. Just doing a little video about the history of movement, protest stuff. Wandsworth Eco Village was amazing, taking the site and hundreds of people. In the first week or two, there was so much energy and organised meetings, and we built a roundhouse and permaculture gardens. The roundhouse was amazing, yeah. Shona's just joining us. And to reclaim that bit of land, but the trouble with that one was there was not enough long-range planning put in. You don't mind videoing? You okay?
Sorry?
You don't mind being on the video? You okay?
Darling. I would have done my face pack.
Okay, cool. So basically, it was an amazing space, and so much went on in the time we were there, but there wasn't the long-term planning to support it if it went beyond 1 month, and that should have been thought about more. You know, if you're going to set up an occupation camp, how are you going to support in the long term people who aren't living there coming to support it, because things get a bit woolly, as we know, on various frontline sites towards the end. But all of these ones influence each other, you know, the levelers and the diggers. I learned at Runnymede, because Simon was a bit of an expert on it, that the diggers and the levelers had about 100 camps up and down the country. I thought it was like 3 or 4 of them, or 5. 100 camps up there. After the English Civil War, there were leveller brigades. Whole groups of people who wanted every man, and they hadn't quite got to every woman consciousness, but every man to have the vote, which I never knew they were campaigning for that in 1649. Everybody to have the vote, or every man to have the vote. It was like...
There was also a group of 700. Well, I went to a democracy festival recently, and as part of that, everybody was invited to... It was like a festival in Wales, and everybody was invited to do democracy readings, and Natalie Bennett came down and did a reading from the Leveller women, who 700 of them went down to Parliament, and part of the reason they went down for 2 reasons. One of them was to demand the release of people like John Milburn,
John Milburn,
her husband, so it was the wife of John Milburn.
Honest
and the
John.
other reason was basically to demand the vote for women, so...
And for ordinary people.
Whoa,
they
it's
had
got
to
a
be
massive
property
tingle
owners.
there.
They had to be property owners, whether you were a guy or a lady. So even then, you know.
The only people who would be able to vote
So
were property owners,
how
yeah.
many people could vote? I mean, most people were tied to the land in tied cottages. They didn't own the property.
Yeah, yeah. And you could be kicked off very easily and very little rights. And the Forcible Entry Act 1371 came in because there were too many fights going on, and that's where we get the beginning of some squatters' rights. Before they could kick you out, they had to go to court. Before they could force entry, they had to go to court before a magistrate and said, I own this cottage, they owe me money, this is the reason I want them out, and get a written piece of paper that says the bailiffs can come around. Otherwise, what happened before that was the Norman lords would just come around with 10 men at arms and break people's heads and cause a lot of damage and kick people out. And there was a formalised way of saying you have to go to court before a magistrate first, you know. But beginning of the Squatters' Handbook is this 1371 Forcible Entry Act gave us some rights to go before a magistrate and hear both sides, and then a written piece of paper is a writ is created that says the bailiffs or the owners can go in, you know.
You know, the heavy side of things. I mean, as you know, my mum was fair, and my papa obviously is, and I didn't get his suntan entirely. And some heavy people, when they found my dad was there, my dad and my mum, because, you know, back in the 60s, some heavy guys come around.
Oh, because they were together, mixed race.
Yeah, because they were together. We're talking about 1963, when it was still like no blacks, no Irish,
no dogs. That's what my man said when he come to London, yeah.
People, my mum said, come round,
Yeah.
like, you're just like, we need the place, go Friday, or we're coming back. This is
Yeah,
nice.
my man's Irish side, yeah, saying things like that, yeah, yeah.
I mean, 50 years ago.
How things have changed, you know. What we're showing with this is the movement of movements and how it moves down through time and how they influence. The two history professors, Mark and Claire, really want to bring that out, that how history influences modern protest, and particularly people's history and the things that have happened. You know, we wouldn't be have necessarily occupied Runnymede if there hadn't been the Magna Carta stuff, there hadn't been the levellers and the diggers stuff.
Oh, that's true, actually, isn't it?
Land is ours set up, you know. What you just said, Dave, about 1/5 of the land used to be common land. That's a shocking figure to me, you
It's
know.
an order of magnitude, and it's been steadily taken by one act or another. One act of Parliament combined with the appropriate or inappropriate level of violence
Yes.
behind it. But a lot of the law, a lot of the land law gets formed up just to institutionalise the rights of the people who can pay the most expensive lawyers. And I was at a conference of there were a load of professors of law there earlier this year, and said basically we make it up as we go along, just like with the recent.
Oh my days.
Oh my day, yeah, isn't it?
These are the professors of law, the big guys who teach the judges, saying this. And if you look at the evictions from St Paul's, from Runnymede, and from what they've been trying to do at Grow Heathrow,
Yeah.
and trying to do now, you can
Yeah.
see how the basic statutes get bent and
To bend in the vote, yes,
by the
yes.
case law, which is argued by the teams of very, very rich.
We pushed hard in the Runnymede court case to say, you know, you need to address these things. You know, they never properly answered that. The Runnymede Charter was created in perpetuity as one of the things, which means perpetual, that some of these rights are given and can't be taken away by an Act of Parliament. And what answer do you have, Judge? And they just brushed it aside and they wouldn't answer.
They just parrot, don't they?
Yeah, and
But it's surprising how many bits of common land there are still. I did a thing for the Tate, the Tate Libraries, funded by, the sugar people, Tate and
Tate and Lyle, slave owning
which actually
plantation,
came
yeah.
from South London, and it was 100-year celebration of, because they're free public libraries, so it was quite radical in its day. And I went to the library to see if there were some original photos. Found one, King Edward VII, coming to open it in his top hat, in the front, by the Wixie Cinema, you know the Wixie Cinema, yeah?
Brixton, yeah.
There's some sheep grazing. I said to the library lady, I said, is this the right place, And she's going, yeah, because it was common land.
Whoa.
1911.
Rosie, the raving grandma, who's going to make a triplets walk, she said something similar. She said when she was a girl, she's like 7 or 10, she used to have to go basically and catch, she lived in Barnet, but she had to catch a bus or a tram for like half an hour to get to the edge of the city, because where she lived was fields. And that was like, whatever it was, 1911, 1912, it was more fields there.
Brixton.
Yeah, Brixton common land, yeah.
In 1911, it was built up.
Yeah,
It was still this patch of common land. And the thing is, because they're only
Common land,
little patches, they tend to get swallowed up with now the bedding schemes of the council.
The Enclosure Acts is what I was saying, the Criminal Justice Act partly, and then the LASPO Act criminalising squatting was some of the final bits of trying to bring in this, Enclosure Act to the point where now you've got things like Operation Encompass, where they can arrest homeless people for being homeless, move them out to certain boroughs. You get in a situation where they've closed off a lot of the land, where even sleeping rough they're now arresting you for. And, I think during the campaign to save squatting, there was somebody talking to history professors, and they did say that every 5-10 years they try and bring in a few new laws to kind of limit the rights that we have left and to enclose more.
But those laws about arresting homeless people, Pete Dean did something for our timeline, and he really picked those out. So for like hundreds of years, that has kept happening.
The Vagrancy Act, gradually. I just want to stop, and we'll go to part 2, because I don't want to do 2 long ones. This is 12 minutes. But